Has this ever happened to you?
Wow, there is nothing on TV. I mean, nothing. I wish I had some place to turn to for suggestions.
Well, now you do. Movies, TV, music, games, and all things geek culture have a new home.
The Basic Ass Dudes podcast?
Yeah, but that was my line. Hosts Nolan and Joseph are just a couple of basic-ass dudes who enjoy the simpler things in life.
Wait, who's that random actor from that movie again?
I'ma get medieval on your ass.
Oh, you mean Vin Rames?
Yeah, that's the guy. Thanks, Basic Ass Dudes.
You're welcome. We're full of a bunch of useless pop culture facts.
Basic-ass dudes and basic-ass dudettes are welcome.
Hey, Basic Ass Dudes. Thanks for the great music suggestions.
Anytime. We love some basic ass music.
New episodes drop every 2 weeks. But that doesn't really help you, does it? Because you don't really know if it's this week or next week, or maybe there's a show break. Or zombies have finally emerged and killed the host. Your best to just subscribe on YouTube, follow us on social media, and make it part of your routine to check daily for new episodes. Audio-only episodes are released the week after the video drops, wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
I can't wait for more Basic Ass Dudes podcasts.
And we can't wait to give it to you.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Cognitive Discourse. So last episode, we talked about an Instagram debate, dialogue, what have you, that I had with another podcaster. And well, I wasn't planning on doing a part 2, and I'm not planning on doing a part 3, 4, 5, and 6, and however long it takes. But I figured I might as well because there was a conversation that still took place even after I stopped recording, and I went off on my little tangent and everything towards the end of that episode. So I figured I'd share it with you guys for y'all that are following along. We did have a conversation past what I shared with you guys on the first part. So I'm going to share this part. And like I said, I don't know if there's going to be a 3 or 4, depending on how long he talks to me. But this one is, again, fairly lengthy, and it's back and forth. And I finally actually kind of got his stance on what we were talking about to begin with, which was the whole Kyle Rittenhouse situation. It took us a while to get there. He did a lot of his own type of explaining and trying to bait me into saying certain things, I believe, to get us to where we are in this conversation in part 2. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get into that. So again, sit back, relax, and here we go. So I believe the last time I left off was when he asked me if I've been to a concealed carry class. I believe that's where I left off. So I'm going to go from there, and then we're going to answer it. So my response to him saying, have you ever been to a concealed carry class? I asked him how he felt about Timothy Simpkins, which those of you who don't know who Timothy Simpkins is, he's a black male who went into a school, shot up a school, and then was let go. Was free to walk. So if you want to know more about the story of Timothy Simpkins, just look him up, and we'll go from there. There's a reason why I brought Timothy up, and it will kind of make more sense as we go along. And then my answer to his question is, if I've ever been to a concealed carry class, is I have. And I used to go to the range a lot, but with ammo prices, I haven't gone as much recently. All my firearms were legally purchased as well. And then I threw this in there. I said, had Alec Baldwin taken a class, that person that he killed might still be alive. And then he responds, I don't know about Timothy Simpkins, so forgive my ignorance on that case. And then he proceeded to ask me, now we're going to go into like the questions of the topics that he's trying to, like I said, I still feel like it's a bait, but that he's trying to bait me in. So he says, what's the first thing they say about possessing a firearm in those classes? And my response, my first half is to who Timothy Simpkins is, and then my second half will answer the class question. So the first half says, well, he was a black male who recently shot up a school and was released. Second half of my answer says, I'm not sure what is being asked here, but in the class that I took, you learned that you treat every firearm as if it's loaded. You don't aim it at anything unless you plan to destroy it. You must know what's going on beyond your target, and you also must learn trigger discipline. And his reply was, if you have a gun on you, you're prepared to kill someone. When you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Which I've heard this said by left string media a lot. A lot of anti-gunners tend to use what he just said verbatim. But I didn't point that out to him. But I'm just letting you guys know. When I read that, I've seen that before. So my response was, I'd rather have one and not need it than need one and not have it, which is another pro-gun saying that a lot of people who are pro-gun tend to say. A gun is a tool just like a hammer. If you carry a gun and don't think you can shoot someone in self-defense, then you shouldn't carry one because you're not doing yourself or anyone around you any good. Now, he does take these words and try to manipulate them a little bit, but what I meant by that is if you're somebody who doesn't feel confident in carrying a firearm, then we both agree that you shouldn't carry a firearm, okay? Not everybody is equipped mentally to carry a firearm, and that's okay. I don't have a problem with that. Most pro-gunners don't have a problem with that. If you don't feel comfortable carrying a firearm, or if you don't think you can bring yourself to killing somebody in self-defense, then I agree you shouldn't carry a firearm. This is a conversation that I had with my wife, who wants to carry, and I've asked her, plain and simple, I'm okay with teaching you firearm safety, but you have to think within yourself. If push came to shove, could you pull the trigger? If it came to self-defense, if it came to protecting yourself or protecting your children, protecting your family, would you be able to pull that trigger? And if the answer is no, then you don't need to carry a firearm, and that is okay. Not everybody can handle that burden. Kyle Rittenhouse is going to have to live with his choice. See what I'm saying? Although I am behind Kyle Rittenhouse and I believe that he should be found not guilty, as he did, there are still consequences that he will have to face on a daily basis. I believe that kid has PTSD. I believe any cop that kills a civilian has PTSD. I believe every soldier that has served and had to fight has PTSD. I'm not knocking that, which I think that's where he's trying to go with that. And you'll see what I'm talking about. Like, I knew where he was going with it, and he took my words and tried to manipulate them. I'm breaking them down here on the podcast as I'm kind of lazy and I type a lot as it is when me and him are talking. And that's one of the reasons why I don't like text as much. I like being able to talk and have conversations via interaction with our voices, because you can hear the inflection in people's voices, and it helps paint a picture a little bit easier. But we're texting, so we're working with what we got. So anyway, I'll read what I put again, just so his response will make sense. So I said, if you carry a gun and don't think you can shoot someone in self-defense, then you shouldn't carry one because you're not doing yourself or anyone around you any good. His response was, exactly. How responsible do you have to be as a gun owner? Also, do you know what I mean by everything looks like a nail? My response was, that's not the issue. Every gun owner I know is responsible. They're law-abiding citizens, and they aren't the problem. Criminals that don't care about laws are the problem, which is why some folks have armed themselves. And I do know what you mean. Can you stop talking to me so condescending? His response was, there was a phrase I used earlier that you didn't know about and you don't care to clarify that you didn't. And your response about hammers being tools didn't seem to take in what I meant. If you think you're the solution, you start looking for problems. By the way, that's not true. If someone's super excited about having a gun, maybe they start looking for a reason to use it. Also not true. If someone maybe doesn't like BLM and shows up armed, maybe they're a hammer looking for a nail. Not always true. So my response to him was, that's an assumption. For somebody who doesn't like when people assume about them, you just made a huge assumption yourself. His response was, if there's no way of finding intent, we look at the actions, yes? I responded, I don't like BLM as an organization, nor do I like Antifa. Yet I don't think about shooting them. I do know what they are capable of, so I would be armed if I was around them. Doesn't mean I'm begging to kill anyone, but rather prepared for what may come. Again, having the right tools for the job. Doesn't mean it will get used, but if it needs to be, it's there. Intent was there with Kyle, no? There are photos of him cleaning up a mess left by BLM. There is evidence of him putting out a fire in a dumpster. There is evidence of him running away before he was forced to engage. Is that not enough? His response, do you conceal carry or do you carry your gun out in the open? So now we're getting personal. I only entertained this question because I, again, wanted to see how far he was willing to go to try to bait and switch here, okay? So his question is, do you conceal carry or do you carry your gun out in the open? My response, I conceal, but I'm legal. And before I even get into this, I made sure, because again, I have an idea where he's going. So this first sentence that I say this with the intent of kind of knowing where he's going to go with it, okay? So I said, I conceal, but I am of legal age to own a handgun. I do take my AR when I go to the country. That I don't conceal because it's too big. But it is in my truck and when I'm heading to a friend's house that lives in hog-heavy areas. I live in Texas. So we have a huge hog population here, and hogs are not a creature that you want to fuck with. So an AR is definitely a weapon that I carry with me. Again, the right tool for the job. I also said in Texas, we can do both because it's constitutional carry. And I'm referring to if you want to conceal or out of the waistband carry. I said, I choose not to be out of the waistband, but legally here you can. His response, and yes, I should, and then this is him acknowledging what I said about Kyle with all the intent that the positive intent that he had. He said, and yes, I should acknowledge those are pieces of evidence that show intent in one way. Now, I'm putting inflections in my voice because I found it funny. He said, one way. He says, I won't ignore that. And then he goes on to ask, so why do you conceal carry instead of having it out in the open? Now, again, I know where he's going with this, so just play along with me, shall ya? My answer was personal choice. Don't want the bad guy to know that I'm carrying. Law-abiding citizens don't get the convenience to plan a counterattack, typically with a bunch of time to think. Seconds matter, while criminals have all the time in the world to plan their attack. Open carrying lets the criminal know who to shoot first. And his response was, yeah, you don't want to be the first target if shit goes down. Exactly. So my response was, so your point? Because I know there's a point there that he's just kind of beating around the bush. Like Eminem says, scared to lick the pussy so you eat around the tush. So his response was, you're sending a message to people everywhere we go with how we present ourselves. I agree with this to a point. And he says, if you show up to your favorite band's concert wearing their merch, that sends a certain message. If you show up to a bank with Kevlar vests and a ski mask, that sends a certain message. As a responsible gun owner yourself, why would you walk around public with a rifle? My response, in Kyle's case, he wasn't old enough to have a handgun. Again, some laws, gun laws in this case, hinder the law-abiding citizen. He had the option, had he had the option to carry a handgun legally, I bet he would have. Because again, it is just a tool for the landscape. Just as I have different guns for different jobs. So by your logic, you should be standing right next to me in the belief that gun laws infringe on our constitutional right to the Second Amendment. His response, I acknowledge that he wasn't old enough to have a handgun, so it wouldn't have been law-abiding. But why would any reasonable gun owner walk around in public with the rifle? What message are they sending? Also, my view on the 2A is nuanced, and it would be a tangent to elaborate. Oh my God. So my response was, I myself don't carry my rifle just because, or to prove my right to have one. I also don't align myself with those audit folks that like to film themselves doing it to get a reaction out of cops and citizens. But Kyle going with one is different. Again, he wasn't trying to get a rise out of anyone. He was doing a job that the governor should have done. He was doing what the police were told not to do. He was there to protect his community. And it's not too far off of an idea to be armed when the reason you're going is because the opposition is destroying and looting. Not going with the firearm in an area in distress is being willfully ignorant, just as thinking him having one is. Again, I stand by it was a tool for the job. It could be used to not only protect himself, but others. Just so happened he needed it to protect himself. Had he not had it, he would have been killed. And again, even though guns were pointed at him, he could have still been beaten to death. It is possible to kill somebody with just one punch. Now, I didn't further elaborate on the punch part, but what I meant by that was people have literally died getting knocked out and the back of their head bouncing off the concrete because they can't catch themselves when they're falling, nor does anybody else catch them when they get knocked out. So they fall, their head bounces off the concrete and they die. So his response was, there are many ways to kill people immediately, including with one punch. Feel free to elaborate on the reason for that question. Do you think other people could have seen him as a threat because he was walking around with a rifle out in the open? My response, do you think he was the only one armed? Do you think it's okay for only one side to be armed? BLM has their own group of armed civilians, their own militias, yet no issue there, right? And some of those groups are openly racist towards white folks. You had idiots like Grandmaster Jay and his group of dummies walking around in full tactical gear. But they were more active during the Breonna Taylor time. His response, I don't think he was the only one armed. I do think that people walking around in full gear is sending an aggressive message. I do think that if you walk around with a rifle, you're showing you have intent to use it. But before I go on reading my response, the one thing that he didn't address, he addressed the full tactical gear. And yes, fucking Grandmaster Jay and his little fucking minions were walking around in full tactical gear. And some of them didn't even know how to operate a firearm safely, including Mr. Grandmaster Jay. This idiot made a YouTube video where he talks about how the bolt catch can make the round go off without even having to hit the trigger. The dude knows nothing about firearms, nor does he know anything about firearm safety. And if you made me choose, regardless of their ideologies, if I had to choose one of these idiots from his side versus picking Kyle going into a battle situation, I would pick Kyle 10 out of 10 times because Kyle understands gun safety. It was shown in pictures and videos of Kyle. He understands gun safety. Grandmaster Jay doesn't know shit, and the majority of his clowns that follow him don't know shit. It's just a bunch of idiots walking around with guns looking tough. But back to what I was saying. So my response to him was, your rifle argument holds no weight because, again, we have established he wasn't old enough to have a handgun, which further proves he followed the law, unlike his attackers. He responded by saying, I'm saying that anyone walking around with a rifle shows intent to use it. I said, I disagree, especially going into a hostile environment. He replied, if you walk into a hostile environment with the rifle out in the open, you're screaming to everyone you have intent to use it. My response is, if you're on the hostile side, sure, I can see that. It's simply don't destroy property. He replied, if you walk into a calm environment with a rifle out in the open, you're still screaming to everyone you have intent to use it. If you see an armed guard standing outside a building, you know they have intent to use it. And I said, when you want to defund the police, it then becomes the citizen's duty to protect that which they live among. He says, if you have a gun, you have to be prepared to kill someone. That's what I'm saying. I responded, doesn't make you a bad person, though. Ever since I started carrying, I have become more calm because I don't want to have to use it. I let things slide a lot more than I did before. The people I surround myself are family folks. We were wild back when we were young, but we've become humbled in our daily lives, and we just want to be left alone. And that's true. I did a lot of dumb shit when I was a kid. I have a lot of friends who did a lot of dumb shit when they were kids. But at the end of the day, when we became family men, we chilled out. We just want to focus on taking care of our families. We don't want to be told what to do. We want to do there's still that rebel mentality in our minds. We do what we want to do and how we want to do it. And I feel that if we're not hurting anybody else, then who the fuck are you to tell me how to live my life? You don't pay my bills, motherfucker. Come and pay my bills and then maybe I'll listen to you. But until then, shut the fuck up and do what you need to do. Stay in your lane. And I didn't type that to him. I actually only just told him that we want to be left alone. I'm going on a tangent again. He responds, that's good, man. You're a responsible gun owner. I don't have a problem with that. Never said I did. So this to me feels like backpedaling, okay? Because you want to generalize people. But then when you're talking to somebody who was part of that group of people that you like to generalize, now all of a sudden you're like, well, I'm not talking about you. Yeah, but you lump me with those people. And people that you know that don't know me automatically lump me with those people. But I didn't say any of that to him. I said, but that's the majority of gun owners. Your fixation is on the rare minority. If you're destroying property and the powers that be don't stop you, then it's the citizen's duty to step in and protect their community. His response says who? Not that I disagree or agree, just asking the question. I said, says the people that want peace and not chaos. Sometimes violence has to be met with violence. It's not my ideal answer, but sometimes opposition only knows one thing and pushes others to the limit of no return. Understand that Kyle being proven not guilty was a big win, not only for him, but all Americans when it comes to self-defense. Had he lost, it would have made people more hesitant to defend themselves, even in their own homes, for fear of what may happen to them in court. So finally, after all was said and done, now we're going to get to his, I guess you could call synopsis, his view on Kyle Rittenhouse. So what I'm about to read to you is he finally came out and explained himself. I think he wanted to know exactly where I was at, and I think he realized that he's not going to be able to persuade me otherwise. So he finally just broke down and gave me his take on the Kyle Rittenhouse case. And then I also have a reply. So I'm gonna read his first. Here's where you and I diverge. Correct me if I'm wrong. You believe Rittenhouse intended to protect people by going there while armed for self-defense. You believe his intent is made clear by his medkit and his putting out a fire. You believe he was defending himself and those people died as a result. You believe that it's important for us to have this principle of self-defense and that this is a case where self-defense was justified. I believe that he should have stayed home, that it was not his responsibility, and in parentheses put a minor, to show up armed to a protest. I believe that I believe that if he did not bring a gun, people would not have died because the aggression towards him would have not begun. I believe the presence of the rifle created the aggression in the first place. I believe that the statute that allowed him to be in legal possession of the rifle is a ridiculous loophole and that a minor should not be able to attain or use a rifle without a guardian. I also believe that the judge was biased and removing the use of victims is a proof of that bias. And finally, I believe that by dismissing these charges, the justice system is stating that creating aggression resulting in murder is permissible. I'm in favor for responsible gun ownership. I believe Rittenhouse is not a responsible gun owner. And I read that verbatim. Here was my response. I don't believe he was there with the intent to protect people. He was asked to help protect a business. He was there to render aid. Sorry, hold on. People are messaging me. He was there to render aid to anyone who may be needing it. Again, you're hung up on the gun because you seem to view it as a murder weapon instead of a tool. And I agree he shouldn't have been there, but when the governor refuses to put a stop to it, people tend to feel inclined to help. You say he isn't a responsible gun owner and shouldn't have had the rifle, yet he showed signs that he not only knew how to handle the firearm, but he had great trigger discipline. He kept his barrel pointed down so as not to barrel flash anyone. He only aimed when needing to fire and only hit the targets he needed to in order to neutralize the situation. Then he tried twice to turn himself in. You only think the judge is biased because you didn't get the outcome that you wanted it. The judge is a very liberal individual and has been loved by many before this trial. And I agree the ones shot should not be called victims, as they were the aggressive ones. Like you learn in concealed carry class, if you become the aggressor, you waive your right to self-defense. For example, if someone cuts me off in traffic, I give chase, we pull over and he comes toward me and I shoot him, that could be determined that I was the aggressor too, because I exacerbated the situation. But if I was to say, cut someone off, and they get mad, I apologize and I try to move on, and they continue to come at me to the point that I need my firearm, in that case, it is much easier to win based on self-defense. In Kyle's case, he was within his legal right to have the firearm. When the aggressor approached, Kyle tried to flee. Aggressor tried to take rifle away from Kyle. Kyle then shoots. Proof is on the hand of the aggressor that he was so close that he had his hand on the barrel. Kyle flees, then circles back to check on said aggressor, then proceeded to go to the cops, was chased by a mob, hit with a skateboard, and had a gun drawn on him. Kyle didn't shoot until said gun was pointed at him. Gage even admitted when his hands were up. Kyle did not engage. It wasn't until Gage admitted to pointing his own gun at Kyle, a gun that Kyle fired. Sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied. A gun that I may remind you, Gage wasn't supposed to legally have to begin with. Might I also add that Joseph Rosenbaum was said to have been yelling racial slurs while chasing Kyle. I just want to throw that out there. So again, if I threw that last little segment in there, just in case he wants to talk about racism. Joseph Rosenbaum wasn't part of BLM. Joseph Rosenbaum had just gotten out and was a free man for a few hours before getting into the conflict with Kyle Rittenhouse. So regardless of what you think, or he shouldn't have taken it, the protesters, it's agitating the protesters, but Joseph Rosenbaum wasn't a protester. He was there just looking for trouble. And he would have found it with somebody. If it wasn't with Kyle, it would have been with somebody else. This dude's argument, just like many other people's arguments, they're so caught up on the gun. And what I find funny is that people cherry pick. He wants to sit there and say that I don't believe Kyle should have had the gun. I don't think he was a responsible gun owner. Okay, that's your opinion. Your opinion doesn't trump one's life. One's right to protect their life. I don't give a fuck if you don't think he was a responsible gun owner, when in reality, pictures and video say otherwise. Again, Kyle Rittenhouse had great trigger discipline, and for being a 17-year-old teenager, being able to stay calm in a situation where most people would break, I commend him. The fact that he was able to stay level-headed during all of that, was able to draw his weapon and fire upon only the aggressors and didn't hit any bystanders is impressive. And then had enough sound body and mind to then try to turn himself into the police officers because he killed someone. I'm sorry, but if you sit there, and I've seen fucking Mr. Andrew Cuomo and Don Lemon and all these fucks from CNN and mainstream media talking about, like, he should have just took the ass whooping. Really? Anybody who's sitting there and would tell and tells me or tells anybody that they would just take the ass kicking because killing your attackers is not right, are full of fucking shit. There is no way that if you were in Kyle's situation, you would have not fired too. And if you can sit there and say that, you are delusional or you're lying to yourself. Or maybe your life just doesn't mean as much to you as other people value their life. I understand the morality behind it. People like to try to flip it and make it seem like we're monsters because we are pro-gun and because we want to carry firearms. And that we don't think that with us carrying this, there may become a time where we have to kill somebody. Trust me, every law-abiding citizen knows the danger, knows the consequence. Most responsible gun owners understand taking accountability. It's these criminals that you victimize that don't understand accountability. And they are further brazened by the fact that they have family, friends, and you left-wing nuts that back them up and get them out of trouble instead of letting them deal with their consequences of their actions. That's the problem. I don't know when the world turned and we started victimizing criminals and vilifying law-abiding citizens. But that's some clown world shit. As a responsible gun owner, I took my classes. I didn't get my license because we're constitutional carry. There's no need for me to have one. And you can say, well, it's better to have... Okay, whatever. I took the class. That was what was important. I go to the range when I can. That's what's important. I teach my family firearm safety so they're not ignorant to them and mistakes happen. My 5-year-old is smart enough to know not to go near my firearms. And when she sees me carrying them, she's always like, those are daddy's guns. She will even tell her own mother, don't touch those, mommy, those are daddy's. When you're ignorant to something, mistakes will happen. When you take the time to learn proper safety and you learn good habits, your chances of something bad happening become very, very minimal. And I'm not going to sit here and say that they won't. Sure, being around firearms, there's always a probability. But if you know proper gun safety, the chances of something bad happening are slim to none. You bring that probability down. And again, this kid is, and I call him a kid because he's actually a lot younger than I am. But he does the same argument I get into with every anti-gunner. They always have to make it a point to be like, I'm for guns. I own guns. I've shot a shotgun. Blah, 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 blah. And again, he completely did null and void about the whole rifle situation. I made it a point to point out that had there not been a law against Kyle having a handgun, he probably would have had a handgun. But if I'm being completely honest, going into a situation like that, even as an adult, I would have much prefer an AR over a handgun. So again, I don't knock Kyle for having it. And the fact that he legally can have it, what's the issue? You want to ride into the sunset with that argument of, well, because he had it, that's what provoked. No, these motherfuckers were out for blood already. They were already destroying businesses, already catching things on fire, already looting. It would have been different had it actually been a peaceful protest, but it wasn't. And I don't know what fucking dream these fuckers are trying to live thinking that it was. If shit really does hit the fan across the country, people like this guy aren't going to know what the fuck to do. They're going to be in the corner of their room with their head between their fucking legs, hoping and praying that the boogeyman don't come through the fucking door. Looking at people like me and many like me, wondering why we're not helping them. When all you have to do is ask questions, we'll be more than happy to show you. I haven't met one gun owner, one gun enthusiast that has looked at somebody and somebody's come and asked them for help and they were like, fuck off, dude. Most gun enthusiasts are excited and happy when somebody new comes into the fold. Because it's one less person putting a stigma on guns. And again, when you get the proper training and you learn the proper gun safety and you see what the gun buying process is, your view tends to change in a positive way about guns and the people who fight on a daily to keep them. Like I said on the last episode, I feel for any of you guys that live in blue states. I feel for Australia. People who use the argument about the Pro 2A saying, "Oh, the government is not coming for your guns." Like that's a fairy tale and that's a myth, and you're fine and you're thinking about the worst possible thing, and blah blah blah. The government's not going to be tyrannical, and even then, your guns wouldn't protect you from the government. Blah 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 blah. Look at Australia. Australia is a perfect example of what could happen here in the States. They had a mandatory buyback. Australians turned their guns in, gave up their freedom, and now look what's happening with the whole COVID crisis down there. They have turned that into a tyrannical fucking weapon to use against their people. And shame on the police and the military that live there that are saying, "It's just a job. I'm just doing my job." Fuck you. And to any U.S. soldiers or U.S. police officers who don't stand by and for civilians and instead stand by and for the government, if they turn tyrannical and you do their bidding, fuck you. That's probably the only positive thing that came out of those mandates, is that we saw who in the military and who in the police force will stand their ground and not give in. And you can't use the excuse, "Oh, I'm just thinking about my family. My family's got..." We all got to eat, bro. We all have families that we're worried about and that we want to take care of. But we rather be free doing it than be slaves. I bow down to no man. I've put my faith in Jesus Christ as of late. But until he comes, I must hold the line. And understand that if this fight comes to our front doors, us patriots, us Pro 2A guys and girls, we have a reason to fight. And we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for every single one of the people who can't or won't. So while you're comfortable being a government puppet, understand that their days are numbered. The government should fear the people. The people shouldn't fear the government. Plain and simple. But as always, I'm just ranting. So with that being said, check the links down in the description for all our social medias. Email me at cognitivediscoursepodcast@gmail.com. That's cognitivediscoursepodcast@gmail.com if you'd like to send me mail, whether it be love, hate, comments, concerns, whatever it may be. And if you want me to share it on the show, just let me know, and I'll be more than happy to read it on the show. With that said, have a great Friday. Have a safe weekend. And until next time.